Hi, and welcome to Heart and Health Wellness. As you can see, we keep it very casual here. I hope that's okay with you. I am your host, Dr. Melissa Welch. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm a medical family therapist. I'm also an educator, and most importantly, I'm very passionate about biopsychosocial, spiritual health and wellness. And the whole purpose of the Heart and Health Wellness podcast is to help you figure out how to make your life better aligned with your values and really focus on full mind, body, and spirit wellness. And so I'm really glad that you're here. I have been spending a lot of time overthinking about how to make this just right. And ultimately, it came down to we need to just get started, and it's going to be a little bit messy, and that's okay. I just want this to be a resource that is helpful to you. Today, we are going to spend just a tiny bit of time reviewing what biopsychosocial spiritual health is. And then we're going to talk about how to focus on setting goals for yourself that will help you attain biopsychosocial spiritual wellness, and really focus on how to look at that not just daily, but also weekly and monthly. And at the end, I'll let you know how you can get a free resource in order to be able to track that on a regular basis to help you reach your goals. First, let's just kind of talk about what biopsychosocial spiritual wellness is. So first of all, like I mentioned, or maybe I didn't mention, but I have a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. So clinically, I've worked with individuals, couples, and families for 9, almost 10 years now. And I really enjoy helping, whether it's individuals or groups of people, figure out how to achieve wellness in their life, to feel like they're living life in alignment with their values, and how to work together and have better relationships. And one of the relationships that I think we often forget about or don't pay enough attention to is the one that we have with ourselves. And if we're taking care of ourselves, we'll be able to better take care of other people around us. So that's kind of the focus, or the foundation of where this podcast is coming from, so that you can be the best version of yourself, so you can be better equipped to have healthy relationships in your life, and to feel good about what you're doing in life. So that is what I've been doing clinically. I also have a PhD in medical family therapy that really focused on how we can expand our understanding and approach to mental health, so that it's not just focused on the psychological component of our wellness, but also look at how that also extends into our biological health, medical issues, health systems, things of that nature, and then also looking at relationships, of course, and then spiritually, which we'll dive into a little bit more, but not just religion as you might be thinking of it. So that's what my doctorate really focused on. And then professionally, I work as a faculty member for a family medicine residency program where I help teach family medicine residents who've graduated medical school and now are focusing on their specific training, how to be primary care doctors. And I help teach them about mental health, behavioral medicine, and how to just work with people and have good people skills and things like that. I do want to note that everything that I'm doing on this podcast with this project is totally separate from my other professional responsibilities. This is just something that I've been wanting to do for a very long time, and I'm finally getting around to making it happen, just at a point in my life where I can finally tackle it. And now I'm trying not to overthink it and just do it so it can be a helpful resource. So I really appreciate you being here and supporting me on this, and I hope that it is helpful to you. So one of the things that I do want to point out is that I have multiple places where you can connect with me. I want this to very much be a conversation where you're giving me feedback on what you need and how I can be helpful. So please connect with me primarily on TikTok and Instagram, and then also be posting this on YouTube. So those are the 3 places where it'll be really easy to connect with me. All of those, my name on there, my account is at Heart and Health Wellness, all one word together, Heart and Health Wellness. So please connect with me on there, send me a message, leave a comment to let me know what's useful to you, what you're needing more of, so that we can make this a very collaborative thing, because I want it to be helpful to you. Okay, so let's talk real quickly about what biopsychosocial spiritual health is. So I touched on this a little bit, but let's dive into it a little bit deeper. So biological health refers to anything that's physical. This could be like how much water you're drinking, how much you're moving your body, what you're putting into your body for nutrition. I don't like to just call it like diet and exercise. I think that's lame, but really think about how we're taking care of our physical bodies. We're very fortunate that our bodies do so much for us and we need to take good care of them. And this is one area personally where I've been lacking and struggling lately. So I'm really focusing on this component of my health lately. And I want to encourage you to do the same thing. So trying to move my body every single day, making sure that I'm being intentional, thoughtful, mindful about what I'm putting into my body, all that kind of stuff. So that's the biological. And I think that's often what we think of immediately when we think about health. That's pretty obvious, right? Like whether you go to the doctor or not, are you sick? Are you healthy? Okay, that's the physical part, but there's a lot more to it. And really all four of these parts need to be in balance in order for you to achieve full whole person health and wellness. The second one is psychological, and that's what we think about typically as like your mental health. So are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling depressed? Those things are what we typically immediately think about when we consider mental health, but there's a lot more to it, right? Like, are we sleeping, which might fall in the biological part, but does that allow our brain to rest and recharge the way that it needs to so that we can feel really good? Are we talking to ourselves with kindness and compassion in a way that we would be talking to a friend so that we're fueling our mind with something that's healthy and helpful, not tearing ourselves down, right? So that's the psychological. Pretty self-explanatory, but that's a big part of health. And if you're missing your mental health, you're not going to have good physical health. And if you're missing your physical health, you're not going to have great mental health. So all of that goes together. The next part is social, and that really has to do with our relationships with other people and with ourselves, but especially with other people. So thinking about, are we getting together with friends? Are we talking with family on a regular basis, whether that's daily or weekly, whatever it might be? Are we asking for help when we need it? Are we connected to social groups like clubs, sports, think intramurals, things like that? Are we engaging with our children and friends of our children, getting everybody all together? Do we get plugged into a church group or something like that where we feel connected and part of something that's bigger than us? Social isolation is one of the most dangerous things that we have out there. And I think during the pandemic, we really learned that the hard way, right? Obviously, we were trying to do the best we could to keep people healthy, but really thinking about the physical health and missing out on what that could do for our mental health and our social health when we are all completely isolated. So I think that was a really good example of being able to see firsthand how important social health is to our overall well-being and our wellness. So that's the social piece. The last part is spiritual. And like I said, this isn't necessarily religion, although it certainly can be. I grew up in a Christian home. I still practice Christianity and I'm still engaged in church. And you will hear some of that in this podcast for sure. However, very clear about this that I'm open, welcome, and accepting of people from all faiths and backgrounds. And I want this to be a place where we can have conversations that's not specifically limited to Christianity. So please know that. But ultimately what it comes down to, whether you consider yourself religious or spiritual, whatever, it's coming down to the fact that we need to know what are our core values, what's important to us in life, whether that's work, family, travel, having fun, experiencing new things, helping people, whatever it might be. You need to know what your core values are. And when we think about having good spiritual health, it's when we feel like our life is living in alignment with those values. So we feel like we have a sense of purpose and belonging and there's meaning in our life. So whatever that might be that's giving you meaning in life, that is what is spiritual health. Okay. So it does not have to be specific to religion. I think that's the part that I really want to emphasize because a lot of people kind of like get scared off about that when I talk about the spirituality component in the context of health and wellness. So all four pieces are really, really important. You need to have the bio, the psycho, the social, and the spiritual component all together, all being taken care of in order to truly achieve full mind, body, spirit, whole person wellness. That's what we're going to focus on in this podcast and on all my different platforms when I'm trying to help you provide resources and things like that. That's the foundation of what we're doing here. All right. So it's something that I'm very passionate about. I enjoy talking about it, teaching about it, all those things. That's what we're going to be doing here. So I want to walk us through 3 different ways that we can be thinking of goals, reflecting on them, and holding ourselves accountable to be achieving biopsychosocial spiritual health. First, we're going to go over some things that you can look at monthly. Then we're going to go over some things that you can look at weekly and then daily. And I'm going to do this kind of briefly in this episode just to get your wheels turning. And then in next week's episode, we will break down the weekly one more. And then in the following episode, we'll break down the daily one a little bit more. So if you want to be able to listen to this part now and then listen to that part later, you'll be able to do that. So I'm really going to break down the monthly part right now, and then we'll look at the weekly and the daily later, but I will cover those briefly. Okay, so first let's talk about a monthly reflection. So at the beginning of every month, I think it's really important to look at what your goals are, how you're making progress toward them, and kind of figure out if that is in alignment with where you're headed, or if you need to shift gears, shift focus, and allow yourself to kind of hit the reset button without judgment or without being frustrated with yourself too much, but just allowing yourself to kind of redirect in the better direction. And I put better in quotes. If you can't see me, I'm using quotation marks because everything that we do, language is really important. And I'm not wanting to cast judgment by using the word better, but really just encouraging you to continue on in a way that makes you feel better about what's going on, if that makes sense. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do when we're reflecting on how we've done over the past month is talk about what is one thing that you are proud of. Okay, so think about the past month. Did you do something really good? Did you meet a goal? Did you make progress toward a goal? What is something that you're proud of? The next thing that you want to focus on is what you are going to make as your priority for next month. So, hey, I did really well in this area last month. I want to continue focusing on that, or I want to continue focusing on something else, like redirect my focus to something else. So something I'm proud of, and then something that I want to focus on for next month. Then we want to go in to focus on progress toward our goals. And we need to be thinking about our goals in different levels, I guess. So we can have monthly goals, quarterly goals, and yearly goals. Now, quarterly, if you're not familiar with that term, something that's used often in business and things like that. And it's just a way of breaking the months down into 3 chunks, or 4 chunks of 3 months each. So the first quarter of the year would be January, February, and March. So we are, at the time of this podcast, almost halfway through that first quarter of the year. The second quarter would be April, May, and June, followed by July, August, and September. And then the fourth quarter is October, November, and December. And breaking down your goals into quarters kind of gives you a way to make it a little bit more attainable rather than just focusing on these big, lofty yearly goals. Same thing with monthly. We want to take those goals that are yearly or quarterly and break them down even more into monthly. So for example, I had the goal for myself to launch my podcast in January of 2025. Life happens. The podcast didn't. That's okay. We're not judging ourselves. It's been a year. It's been years in the making anyways. So now we're going to make that our February goal, and it's going to happen. We are going to be releasing this whether it is perfect or not, right? So we're making that a monthly goal so we can still meet our quarterly goals of getting that podcast going, getting things started, getting that first workshop under our belt, all of that kind of stuff. And we will talk about that workshop more later. But just to give you an example, it's okay to have this big yearly goal and then to break it down into smaller chunks so it feels more attainable. It feels like you can actually achieve it and do something with it. And I think that's a really helpful way to do it. Talk about what your progress is toward each of those levels of goals. The next thing I want you to do is talk about where you are seeing alignment with your values. So if my value is spending time with my family, I got to do that in January, although it was really a sad situation for my grandfather's funeral. I still had some really nice quality time with my family in Texas, and I really loved that. So that might be an example of where I feel like my life is in alignment with my values. I also want you to focus on if there's any area where you might be feeling like you're lacking alignment with your values, right? So if, for example, we'll go with the family stuff some more. So if time with my family is really important to me, making sure that my son he's about 1.5, a little bit older now, making sure that he has time with his grandparents. Well, we've had very little time with my in-laws this month in January. And so I need to make sure that in February, we're making that a priority because it's important to me that he's getting to know both sides of the family and things like that. So that's an example of where that's something that's really important to me, and it hasn't been happening this past month. So I need to make sure that I'm navigating my decisions, actions, things that I'm doing to make sure that they're in alignment with what my values are. I hope that makes sense. So for whatever that might be for you, you need to be very clear about what your values are in the first place in order to decide if your life is in alignment with those values or if it's lacking alignment with those values. If you don't know what your values are, that's not going to be a very productive or helpful process. Okay. So make sure that you know what those values are to start with. The other thing that I want you to do is go ahead and rate how you feel like you're doing with your biopsychosocial spiritual wellness on a scale of 1 to 5. So you're going to break it down into those 4 different quadrants. You have the biological, the psychological, the social, and the spiritual quadrants, right? Put those down and then mark them from 1 to 5, with 1 being like not doing great at all, 5 doing this is superb, everything's great, love it so much, okay? Where are you with each of those different pillars of your health right now? Okay, so go ahead and do that. Then if you want to just do some reflection or kind of meditating on a positive like quote or Bible verse or, something that's encouraging to you, I think that would be a good practice to do that as well. But those are the things that you want to do for a monthly reflection. Okay, this is something that you need to be doing every single month to keep yourself on track, keep yourself accountable, and encouraging yourself, not just to like reflect on what hasn't gone well that you want to change, but also what did go well that you want to continue. Really good thing to be doing monthly. So real quick, again, I'm not going to go into detail for weekly or daily, but let's just talk briefly about what kinds of things you would want to look at for a weekly overview. You might want to look at what are some of your top priorities for the week, celebrate some of your wins, think about what might be some of your biggest challenges or obstacles for the week, and kind of make a plan for how you might get around those or work through them. Think about opportunities for the week coming up that you could do, I'm going to use that word again, better than you did last week to improve upon what you had already done last week or what you didn't get done last week. And then think about if you attended to your whole person health. Did you think about your biological, psychological, social, and spiritual health needs? And if so, give yourself kind of a rating there and what you would want to do for that differently. Also really good to go ahead and put down some encouraging notes to yourself to keep yourself going and motivated. You can do this on a cheat sheet, or you could do it on somewhere like a sticky note or something like that where you see it every day. And then again, maybe have something that you can kind of meditate on or think about. Okay, so for the daily one, just really quickly, you're going to think about what you can do for each of those different pillars: biological, psychological, social, and spiritual, and break that down for each one. But each day you need to make sure that you're attending to all 4. All right. And I'm going to have to wrap it up here. So if this was helpful to you, let me know in the comments. Make sure you connect with me on those different platforms. I hope this was helpful to think about what biopsychosocial spiritual wellness is, how you can be attending to it, and making sure that you're holding yourself accountable on a monthly and weekly basis. We'll get more into weekly and daily check-ins later. If you want a free wellness tracker, I've built one for you that will help you do a monthly reflection. That is available on my website, so check that out in the show notes. I've got the link for you, completely free. Don't have to spend any money on that, okay? And that will help you get started. I'll have another one for weekly and daily that we'll get into later. So tune in next week. Again, thank you so much for being here. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Welch. I really appreciate your support. Also, one more thing that you can do to help a new podcast is to leave us a review and share us with one other person that might benefit from this podcast. Let them know if you thought it was helpful and help us spread the word about it. Thank y'all so much, and I'll see y'all next time.